the level at which we don't know about nutrition might be, baffling to some people. Because
we've been eating for a long time though.
Yeah, because we have a lot of gaps in our knowledge of what food does for diseases that have to do with the gastrointestinal tract. People just think that because somebody still is in a larger body, it means they haven't attempted anything. But a lot of the people who have extreme weight, they have been overweight since they were children. And they have been on some sort of intervention all their life. Until very recently, I feel only now conversations about body weight started to include mental health and a lot more conversations about overall health, and not having the goal of losing weight, but having the goal of improving your health. And people think they are one and the same, but they are not.
Hi there, this is part 2 of our conversation on body shaming. In this episode, we're going to talk about some misconceptions around weight loss, what it means to be healthy, and how difficult actual research into nutritional science can be.
And beyond this idea of, social issues and whatever, I actually have some medical remarks, let's say, that really piss me off.
You always do.
The fact that a lot of people talk about weight, stretch marks, cellulitis, as if they know what the fuck they're talking about.
So let's have some definitions then.
Well,
science for the people.
Stretch marks happen where for some reason the collagen in your skin breaks and you are left with these whitish lines. There are some cases where you have pinkish lines, and those happen in actually some pathological cases. They are within a certain disease. But these sort of lines that we all know as stretch marks that are whitish, they do not represent a health concern, and you cannot change them. You can go to the gym however much you want. You won't, come home without stretch marks. Cellulitis, it is a medical term for an infection of the skin. Okay, so it has absolutely nothing to do with how it is used in the, beauty magazines and by the people. The fact that after you age, especially in women, because we have a different body composition and a different way of the way the fat is distributed throughout, and also our hormones and everything are different. We have this fat that sometimes looks like our skin is less smooth, and at least in Romania, but I think in other countries, there is this way of referring to it as orange peel skin, know, and that is also something that pisses me off, because that is also it's also taken from a medical term, and that is a term for a breast with a tumor.
Oh,
yes. The skin.
The more you know.
Yes, the skin on the breast, when you have a tumor underneath and it is quite large and it basically touches the skin starts to look like orange peel.
Oh.
Okay, so
it's like the tumor poking out?
Pretty much, yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it bothers me terribly when I see.
Yeah, I can see why now. Yes. It's not just you being pedant, it's actually because it conjures up a certain image.
Yes. Exactly. It conjures up real health issues that are just taken terms out of actually, medical books and being trivialized for, selling more Vaseline.
But I think this whole bringing the medical aspect into it is also relevant, because I know that you told me about sort of like the backlash to this guy Buchnich's statement, and then he's trying to sort of backpedal or give explanations, and one of the arguments was like, oh, I'm just concerned about your health, honey, argument, which obviously is trying to bring the medical thing into
it happened really, like this summer also, Bill Maher stepped in it again with the same fucking argument.
Also Jordan Peterson with the model on the Sports Illustrated cover.
Yes.
Yeah, he also was like, well, but it's actually, I said she's not beautiful because she is not healthy. And
yeah, also he didn't say that she's not beautiful. He said that he does not feel attracted to it, and nobody can make him feel she's beautiful. And I'm like, why the fuck?
Sorry, not beautiful.
Yeah, I'm like, and most people are like, why the fuck do you think you have to? You can just look at the cover magazine and go like, yeah, it's fine.
I'm also befuddled by the fact that some people feel like you can literally throw up at seeing someone, but why they feel like I'm going to tell you, it's not just that I don't find you attractive, I actually find you repulsive, and I want everyone to know. Like,
it's not just that I find you unattractive, is that I am annoyed at the lack of effort on your part to improve as to me to want to actually find you at least somewhat fuckable.
And also annoyed at the idea that some people might walk up to me and say, well, actually, I would bang her.
yes.
It's like, I mean, again, we keep joking about how we are the standard of everything that's good and beautiful and great. Like, our opinion is that the golden standard.
Obviously.
That's...
We are waiting for the universe to catch on.
Yeah, exactly. But the fact that some people, without any self-awareness, do that, as in that's how they behave, like that's the case, is just...
And Bill Maher recently, went on a tirade. I mean, he said that this several times on his show.
He is like a veteran fat shamer.
Yes, that we need to do more to shame people, to shame fat people. And he went after a doctor that I'm not exactly sure what he said on his social media, but he went after this doctor going like, yeah, you shouldn't encourage people to be fat, because somehow if you don't shame somebody, it means you're encouraging them to be fat. And if you treat somebody with respect, they will just take that to mean that they can like live their life, and then where will it be?
So by that logic, if someone has dyslexia, you should just be like, shame them continuously.
Yes.
Dog save the queen, dog save the queen.
You don't understand, because a lot of people think that obesity is a choice. So you didn't choose to be dyslexic, but you chose to be obese, and you could stop choosing it. So that's how it goes. Anyway, and Bill Maher went, and specifically named this doctor on his show. And I just discovered their podcast actually today, and it's called Doctors Who Live.
Okay. The buff doctors.
The buff doctors, yes. The doctor that Bill Maher went after is a doctor who treats obese people to, make them less obese.
Not trying hard enough, according to Bill.
And the dude was like, just because I disagree with your wording and I disagree with your approach, because as somebody who actually does this as a job, I know for sure this approach doesn't work, and it even backfire, It is more likely for somebody who is shamed to not go to the doctor, to not seek help, to not go to the gym, to not get out of the house, so basically you are more likely to make people more obese with your approach. What he does, actually, he is a person who recommends, starting from lifestyle changes to medication and to actually surgery. So between him and Bill Maher, he's actually a person who does something for people to be less obese. And Bill Maher chose to somehow name and shame him, and not even get him on his show and ask him, whatever. And the guys were quite funny, because they were like, Bill Maher, get the dude on the show and we will just show up there and, look really menacing and be his bodyguard. Anyway, I have this also problem from the medical standpoint, because by God, after decades and decades of fucking diets, we know that losing weight is difficult. And one of the things that this doctor said, that Bill Maher mocked, was that this doctor said that we don't know all of the reasons for obesity. And Bill Maher was, it's obviously people eat too much. We've solved it, The end.
It's common sense, people. It's common sense.
And obviously this doctor is trying to somehow preach being obese by saying that we don't know all the causes, because it's obviously...
We don't need science when we have common sense and Bill Maher.
And, the guy, and not just him, a lot of doctors that work in the obesity field and that actually do really, really boring shit, like clinical trials with actual humans in, correct settings, try to actually learn something and not just presuppose ideas or just find a mechanism somewhere and just, go wild with it and write a book about a diet, because it didn't used to be that, but nowadays a lot of the people that peddle a lot of bad ideas about diet tend to also be actually medical professionals. And some of them just fall in love with a mechanism and they will bang you over the head with like, we found this mechanism. But okay, but did you actually research this in humans and real life? And,
not lobsters.
Not lobsters.
Lobsters are not enough.
It's really, really, really hard to do nutritional trials and to do them well. You have to have nutritional trials in controlled environments, but those you can do them for a short period of time, but be really strict about things. And also it's important to corroborate those facts with the ones from trials with, people, let's say people in the wild.
How old is, in terms of its history, nutritional science? Is it like a relatively new science?
I would say as a science is relatively new. As opinions about food, I mean, hey, we have Kellogg.
Yeah, because I was thinking about, the fact that sometimes when something as a field of science is kind of new, obviously you have, as you said, the people who are enamored with system or an idea, and they try to fit everything into that. And I was just like thinking about how when people first started studying more rigorously, let's say, the mental landscape of people, like mental illnesses and mental health, you had like, Freud was like,
well, I guess it's the mom who fucked up or the dad, or...
Because these things were sort of intuitive to understand. And then as people accumulated knowledge, and as you said, you start actually doing experiments and trying to verify your intuitions, so to speak, the picture gets more complex. But people still remember the catchphrases, and it seems like this is that moment for nutrition.
What I'm trying to say is that the level at which we don't know about nutrition might be, baffling to some people. Because like...
We've been eating for a long time, though.
Yeah, because we have a lot of gaps in our knowledge of what food does for diseases that have to do with the gastrointestinal tract. That seem kind of like pretty much the ones that you study first, and that somehow would make more sense and would be easier to discuss and find that stuff out than, let's say, how food influences your heart or your liver or your brain or whatever. But even in that area, there is still a lot we don't know. And one of the, let's say, word of the year or whatever, the past few years, that if you want to sound like you're really saying something, you say microbiome.
What?
Microbiome are the bacteria in our gut.
Okay.
And they are a lot. And what we know is that we tested at a certain point for some people what bacteria are in their poop. Or we looked what bacteria were in the guts of dead people. Because it's a bit harder to just cut up live people.
At the moment, we're working on it.
Yeah. And okay, so we found some bacteria. We know some families of bacteria that live there. We are on agreement about the fact that they are really important, and the fact that how we modify them, and the fact that they are being modified but by what we eat, and the fact that their modification has an impact on our health and body, but not exactly which bacteria would do what and the amount of that bacteria, because from your childhood to whatever moment, the bacteria in your gut changes a lot. And we don't have, for the moment, the ways to monitor in a way that it becomes clear to us that, well, if you have this sort of fluctuation, this might lead to that disease. We have some mechanisms which I'm not trying to vilify mechanisms. They are very important. But people just go from mechanism to like, ta-da, we've solved it.
Yeah.
And somehow people have this obsession with things being the same in the human body. And this is how you get to today's obsession with people monitoring their glucose without being diabetic. Let's just monitor my glucose and be absolutely frightened by the fact that my glucose level is modified throughout the day while I eat.
Is this a new hobby that I can take up as a 30-something-year-old?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, it is. And like, it's a good thing to monitor things in order for us to see if we can learn something or, but don't do it outside of a research facility, because in a research setting, you monitor in the hopes that at some point, some sort of patterns will tell you something. But as an individual person at home, you will learn shit.
Yeah.
You will just be obsessing over things for no reason and basically pathologizing your everyday fucking life for no reason. So going back to obesity, it is true when people say that we don't know all the reasons people are obese, because we can see that the same food might have different impact, or the same kind of lifestyle, different kind of impact on different people. And also we see things, talking about the glucose monitoring, that on the same person, the same foods don't result in the same glucose response. So there are a lot of things we don't know. And when you see this sort of...
But Bill knows, though.
Yeah, this incredible, assumption about yourself that you're so fucking bright, and you've said it. We know, it's food. Fuck you, man. I mean, then why the fuck is it so hard to... And this doctor said the very basic thing is that obesity is a result of one's genetic and epigenetic structure as it interacts with the changes in environment. And it sounds really simple, and it's so fucking complicated because, clearly our genetics make all of what we are. The way we interact with the environment can modify things, and hence you have epigenetics, and that keeps interacting with the environment and can keep changing. So it's really complicated. This is one other thing that bothers me, that people just think that because somebody still is in a larger body, it means they haven't attempted anything. But a lot of the people who have extreme weight, they have been overweight since they were children. And they have been on some sort of intervention all their life. Until very recently, I feel only now conversations about body weight started to include mental health and a lot more conversations about overall health, and not having the goal of losing weight, but having the goal of improving your health. And people think they are one and the same, but they are not. We all know losing weight is difficult. We all know it is most likely not achievable. And even if some percentage of weight loss will be achievable, it would not be the percentage that some people who think about this should find satisfying. But we know that changing habits, eating habits, working habits, sleeping habits, improves health beyond your weight, So only now the approach is a lot more towards habit forming and less on weight.
So the success of that sort of process is not measured by how many kilos that
you lost,
but like how your health outcomes change overall. So like
overall,
everything
over
from
time.
like, I'm assuming blood pressure to hormone levels,
glucose, lipid, whatever. So sure, those things can be even more improved by losing weight, but you can also have health outcomes without necessarily achieving weight loss. But only recently the conversation started to be like this. For many decades were all sorts of stupid fucking diets, and these people that are overweight might have been for 20, 30 years basically jumping from eating disorder to eating disorder. And if you would tell what is considered a normal size body, a normal BMI, a normal BMI person, if they would tell you that they eat like the way fat people were told to eat, you would tell them to stop because that is disorder eating. But if a fat person eats like that, it's like what they have to do.
And I think that with regards to how losing weight or having a certain weight is not necessarily correlate with how healthy you are, I think it's also very important to remember two things. One of them is all the people who seriously get into, I'm not saying specifically bodybuilding, but like who are really concerned about their looks and things like that, and maybe start taking all sorts of enhancements. And then there are also like professional athletes who, I'm sorry to, burst the bubble of anyone who doesn't already know, they're all juiced up in one way or another.
Yes.
And these are people that generally as the public tend to regard as the pinnacle of health.
Yes.
But many of them have problems not just physically, like hormonal imbalances or things like that, but also in terms of mental health, in the way many people have body dysmorphia.
Yes.
And the number of athletes who just, they're at the top of their games, and then something we don't know because we're We don't get the details.
Yeah.
They just fall off. And again, people tend to be super harsh, like, oh, they were not ambitious enough and things like that. But like, no, it's mostly people are having serious mental issues and things like that, and not getting enough support because they're just pushed not for their health, but for their performance and the money that brings all the people down the line. So obviously, no, like the healthy looking body and the actually healthy body and person, unfortunately, they don't overlap perfectly.
No, definitely not. And one thing that is very specific, but it relates to what I do as my job. Some sort of byproduct of this idea about fat bad all the time, thin good all the time. I deal with people who have cancer, and I work in the field of nutrition, oncological nutrition. It's very hard to convince the patients that are overweight and also diagnosed with cancer that the fact that they're losing weight now is bad. A lot of them just are opposed to this thing because like, yes, but everybody told me that being overweight, will bring me healthy issues. So now I want to fix my health issues. And yes, you won't fix them right now, And also sometimes family and friends are opposed to that but I want them to be healthy. Well, sure, but it won't happen in this way, not right now. I don't want to generalize because there are, for example, the women who have breast tumors. Sometimes they feel rather okay during treatment, and we know that in hormonal-dependent breast tumors, extra body fat is actually a cause for the disease coming back. So sure, there are exceptions. But overall, when you have just been diagnosed and you have lost weight before diagnosis, and your treatment most likely will make it hard for you to eat for different reasons, so a lot more loss might be coming, your first priority should be to maintain weight, and more than that, to maintain muscle mass.
Yeah.
So there are many aspects that are influenced by this very superficial public discussion about body shape and health. So you think we covered like all our bases about this subject?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to do the outro?
I never know what to say as the outro, except like...
Do I ever look like I know what to say?
No. So basically, I hope somebody listened, somebody took something out of this conversation, and hopefully you will listen to us again. Don't forget to review our podcast on whatever, wherever you listen to podcasts, be it Spotify or, iTunes or wherever.
Leave us a comment on YouTube.
Leave us a comment on YouTube and, basically just, show us a lot of love everywhere. But also be respectful for our feelings. Okay, bye.
Bye.